Today, on A Word on Westerns, Will Hutchins.
And now I appreciate that time so much more. Every moment of that time there I should have cherished. No matter what I thought, it was top line all the way. It was a great place to spend 5 years.
Welcome to A Word on Westerns, where we talk to the greatest Western creators of yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
The following interview was recorded several years ago when Will Hutchins, born Marshall Lowell Hutchison on May 5, 1930, still spoke with the easy, sun-warmed cadence that made Sugarfoot's Tom Brewster a household name. Our short introduction was recorded only days before Will's final curtain on April 21, 2025, when he passed away in Manhasset, New York at the age of 94. Across 4 seasons and 69 episodes of Sugarfoot, 1957-61, and later opposite Elvis Presley in Spin Out, 1966, and Clambake, 1967, Will combined wry humor with open-hearted charm. Off-screen, he even donned grease paint as Patch as the clown for Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey, living proof that show business could still be approached with childlike delight. Will's loving wife, Babs, was always there for him and helped set up their apartment for the Zoom interview. Our condolences go out to her and all of Will's friends and fans. His warmth fills every minute of the interview that follows. We present it now, dedicated to his memory, in gratitude for the laughter and grace he shared with audiences and friends alike. May this episode keep that gentle spirit riding on. Thank you, Will.
Hi, I'm R.J. Word.
And I'm Rob Word, the father of the fine R.J. Word.
Well, we're here today on A Word on Westerns to talk to you about our guest, Will Hutchins.
Will Hutchins was a star in Sugarfoot. He also did a terrific Gunsmoke episode with Jim Arness, but the Sugarfoot series with Will came about because the biggest hit that Warner Brothers had in 1955 as they entered television was a 1-hour Western drama starring big Clint Walker. Well, they were doing a lot of episodes every year, hour-long shows, half-hour shows. The normal season was 39 episodes a year. Well,
and today,
12.
12, maybe. A lot of shows are 8. The line between miniseries and TV series and limited series is all blurring.
It certainly is. But in the old days, in 1955, when Cheyenne premiered, it was 39 episodes per year. And during the summer, the studios would pick the best 13 of that 39 to run during the summer months so that the time slot would maintain the audience. But when Clint Walker, as Cheyenne, was getting worn out from doing so many episodes, they said, we need to have a rotating show with this, and they created
Sugarfoot.
Sugarfoot is right. It's based on a Will Rogers film, and the star of that was Will Hutchins. How he got his name, how he got his start, he grew up in Los Angeles, is an amazing story. And in 2021, at the height of COVID, we did a Zoom interview with Will and his wife Babs. They were in Manhattan, we were in Hollywood, and RJ set it up on our end, and Babs set it up for Will in the East.
And it came together pretty well. I thought it was a fun opportunity for us to start doing shows with guests who otherwise couldn't make it out to LA, because when we started this, a big point of it was to always do it in front of a live audience. But we knew with the times we had to adapt.
So all of you out there are going to have to just laugh amongst yourselves, bring in some friends to listen to this podcast, and you'll be our audience out there. We won't be able to hear you laughing, but Will Hutchins is a funny guy, and we were thrilled for him to be able to join us. So, RJ, what do you think we should do now?
Well, in the words of Jack Nicholson, who worked with
Will on the shooting. I don't have any words.
Here's Will.
Yeah. Here's Will.
Will, welcome to the show.
Hey, Warden, the governor pardoned me because Pat O'Brien gave me my last rites. And Babs came in here and told me to sit up straight in the chair. So I'm about to go on the last mile. But halfway there, I'm going to start yelling and screaming, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. That's to scare the dead-end kids. So they won't grow up to be a dirty rat like Rocky Sullivan. Yeah. Okay, I got that on my system.
Well, okay, I'm glad you did that. Now, the Dead End Kids. You're a film buff, obviously, if you remember the Dead End Kids. So you grew up in Los Angeles, is that right?
Yeah, BS, before smog.
Well, growing up in Los Angeles, did you have any interaction with any of the movie stars when you were a kid?
Yeah. One day, a buddy of mine and I were coming home from high school. We walked home from Marshall High, and I lived over the bridge then in Atwater. Anyhow, we're walking home. Here comes somebody on horseback. It was Alan Ladd. Alan Ladd, our hero. My buddy was dumbfounded, but I managed howdy. And he went, howdy, and rode on. Boy, that was a thrill. So you ran into people all the time out there.
Warner Brothers, of course, is really close to Griffith Park. How did you end up getting signed by Warner Brothers? Because it seemed like you were there just for a little while and you got your own television series, Sugarfoot.
From the entertainment capital of the world, produced for television by Warner Brothers.
How did that come about?
Well, after the Army, I became a postman for a while. It was around Christmas time, and I used my own car, delivered mail. Then I went back to my college, Pomona College, and worked out there in a few plays, even though I'd already been there. And you know who was a student then? Richard Chamberlain. And that guy was sensational. We did a show called Run for Cover at Pomona College, and they needed backing to put it on in Hollywood. So my dad left me $2,000, and he said, it's got to be used strictly for business, no shilly-shally. So I said, well, my major was show business. Why can't I invest in the show? So we put the show on at the Ivar Theater in Hollywood, which is an old strip joint. The walls that only had ears or something like that. Remember Dick Clayton, who was James Dean's agent, called, and my mom answered. And they talked, and he was interested, and he asked how old I was. Immediately, she shaved off 2 years. I wish it had been more, but she shaved off 2. And that seemed to pique his interest even more. And he became my agent. And Warner Brothers called me over to try out for a part in a show they called Conflict. Now, this was called The Magic Brew. And Jim Backus played the carny who went from town to town, hustling his magic brew. He's a hustler. And I wanted to join him because it seemed like such a dramatic, romantic life. He had a pretty daughter as well, Jim. And what a great guy to start out working with. And the guy that used to produce Johnny Carson, Fred Cordova, directed. So what a way to start out. I got that part because Tab Hunter turned it down. And thanks, Tab. And that was a fun show to do. And I met my favorite person, Montgomery Pittman, who had written the show and also had a part in it. He was the most talented guy I ever worked with. And we got to do quite a few shows together. And all of his scripts were you just read them and the words just bounced off. And you had all these ideas. And he knew exactly what to do. And he was a funny guy. He was just a funny guy. He didn't take himself seriously, just a joy. And that's how I got my start, because that was like a screen test. And then they had me in mind for Royal Stockdale in No Time for Sergeants, because I would have saved them a lot of money. Andy Griffith, you know. So I did a scene with Don Knotts, except James Garner played that part, and I was Andy Griffith. And one of the viewers was David Butler. Now, he directed Will Rogers in his 2 last movies, Will Rogers. So he said, that guy's pretty good. He'd be a good Will Stockdale. And so that's where I got the name Will. Anyhow, I didn't get the part. Cooler heads prevailed. But I did get to be the part of the plane that got lost.
What's your real name, and how old did your mother say you were?
My real name is Marshall Lowell Hutchison. Lowell was my dad. And we spell our name Hutchason. We're the only family, I think, in the United States, in those days anyhow, that spelled it that way. It was originally Muck Hutchison, from Scotland. And my mom said I was born in 1932. I wish it had been a little more, but I was actually born in 1930. And so now when I go to the doctors, they say birth date, and I go 5530.
Well, so Montgomery Pittman, you're right. He was a terrific writer and director. He wrote some of the best Mavericks, and of course your Canary Kid on Sugarfoot.
I guess the conflict series cost too much money. They had to use all their stars like Natalie Wood, and Tab Hunter, they used them all. And I had to come up with a different story every week or different kinds of stories. I did 3 of them. And the last one I did was a Montgomery Pittman script too, called Stranger on the Road. Gee, would I like to get a hold of that? It must exist somewhere. Anybody out there? Stranger on the Road. So I was a stranger on the road, and I was on the road because I was eluding the cops. They thought I'd killed somebody, but I was innocent. But I was running from the cops. And I end up at a ranch run by Barton McLean. What a great thrill working with that guy was. Anyhow, so we did this Stranger on the Road, and I was a goofy cowboy in it. And I was so goofy, I got up on the horse backwards and rode the horse backwards. And at the end, Rex Reason and I had a fist fight, and he was pounding the heck out of me. And I was trying to defend myself. He just kept pounding me and pounding me. He said, exhausted. He said, I had 2,400, and he just crumbled to the ground. And Montgomery Pittman wrote that one. It was very Sugarfootish, and that gave me the idea to do Sugarfoot. Now, Sugarfoot had been shot previously at Warner Brothers with Randolph Scott as Sugarfoot. Entirely different, of course. And so that's how that came about. Now, Montgomery, I can't stop talking about him. My favorite 5 shows were Montgomery Pittman, Sugarfoot. 4 of them were the Canary Kid, in which I got to play a bad guy. So I got the dual role. I got to be the sweet sarsaparilla chugging with a dash of cherry Sugarfoot and a husky out of the bottle. Canary Kid, yeah. I got to wear Humphrey Bogart's pants. Yeah, I got to wear his pants. That was a thrill. And we done 2 Sugarfoot Canary Kid, the Canary Kid and the Return of the Canary Kid. And now we got the 3rd Canary Kid. It was called The Trial of the Canary Kid. Now, Monty didn't have time to write that one. So they got a lady. She was a school teacher. I can't think of her name right offhand. She didn't know anything about how to write a Sugarfoot or a Canary Kid. It was really lousy. So I said to Monty, how can we do this thing? He says, will you trust me? What am I going to do? Walk out? I'm no Betty Davis. So I say, okay. And the genius of Monty Pittman came to the fore. And so did all the cast. I mean, we had Peter Brown and Adam West and Wade Preston and Ty Hardin. It was my favorite show. That to me was movie magic. And I still can't believe I get chills right now thinking of how great that show came out. And it looked like crud on the page. So that's a lesson of some sort.
He did write a lot of wonderful shows at Warner Brothers. Some of the better Mavericks as well. And his daughter was Sherry Jackson.
I used to dream that she'd be in one of our shows, but I was in New York on a junket, one of the last junkets to plug the young Philadelphians. So we all got our bus and we went cross country, stopping all the way. Boy, that was a treat. So we get to New York and I say, this is really fun. And I had a buddy I went to college with, and his wife let me stay with them. And so finally I got a call. We need you out here in a 77 Sunset Strip. And it was a Monty Pittman direction. And I wouldn't miss that. So I flew back, and I was just a tagline. Sherry Jackson and I were on a date, and we were someplace, and here comes Cookie. of course, I had the messy hair. William Wellman called me Mop Top. I always had a little trouble keeping my hair. I don't know what it was different from show to show. Really mess. And I hated to put stuff on it. So it was a gag with Kooky. Can I lend me your comb? Because my hair was so messy. And we were just a punchline at the end. You know, it's weird. I'm 91 almost. And I'm about the only guy I know in my age that has hair and not bald. They have white hair. Now, a few years ago, I had a cancer operation on my throat. And I had to take radiation. And I was getting sidewall. And after the radiation, the sidewalls disappeared. So there was always a flip side to everything. They bleached my hair for that because I was supposed to be Gene Raymond's son. And Dolores saw that, liked it. So the first 2 or 3 years on Sugarfoot, they used to lighten my hair. It hurt. It stung. But I loved the gal that did it. So it was fun to get together with her once in a while. But as the series went on, my hair got darker and darker. Every time I go to a barber, I say, what color do you call us? And they come up with all different colors. And Babs has her hair a certain light color. Hers is called Arctic Blonde. So I call my hair Arctic Blonde. It's a real color. It's not fake.
Let me ask you about the photograph that's a famous photograph of you and the other Warner Brothers cowboys all together. What a wonderful photograph that is with you, James Garner, Wade Preston, Ty Hardin, Peter Brown. Woo!
But that was a big thrill. And it is a great picture. And I've signed that picture so many times. I'm on the left side, so I have to sign perpendicularly along my pants. So there's no room on it horizontal.
When it ended, how did that affect you?
And I was invited to go see Hugh Benson, the second in command. So I went into his office, and he sat there and he informed me they no longer avail themselves of my services. I didn't feel so bad because I was a young guy, and who knows what comes next. And then he says, what are you going to do next? What's next? And I said, I don't know. He says, come on, what's next? And I had no idea. So I went back to the beach. I was kind of a beach bum. I went back to the beach that day, and all my buddies, and announced that I was available. And then life went on. And then jobs came along. And now I appreciate that time so much more. Every moment of that time there I should have cherished. No matter what I thought, it was just top line all the way. It was a great place to spend 5 years. Let's talk about you. Tell me, what did you think of my last performance?
What have you got in your hand there, cowboy?
It's a golden boot. And when I got it, I said, this is heavier than an Oscar. And Babs yelled out from the audience, how would you know? When I discovered I could put booze in there and have a drink, I could make it a riding cup or whatever you call it. The syrup cup.
Well, it's nice to have a prop like that, but you know, the golden boot was something that we started with Pat Buttram years and years ago, and Pat was just the best.
He said things like, I love Westerns that always live in my heart and pay no rent and things like that. And then he started the Golden Boots, and he was such a great MC. And I wish he could have done the Oscar a time or two. He would have been wonderful. For 12 years, I worked in the NBC warehouse, and I used to ride my bike to work because somebody stole my car. And I just been back to the United States. I didn't have any money to buy insurance, so somebody stole my car out of the garage. And so I rode my bike to work back and forth for 12 years. And I used to listen to Morgan in the morning on my bike radio. And Pat Buttram had a spot on there, and he was so funny. I get to my desk and I write down all of his jokes. And so the last time I saw him, I said, you know, I use a lot of your jokes on my answering machine. Now Babs has confiscated that. She does the answering, but I used to do a lot of Pat Buttram stuff. Can I put this down now?
Yes, please put it down. You know, I'm sure you've drunk everything that it had in it. So that was presented to you, presented by your pal Clint Walker.
Cheyenne, Cheyenne, where will you be happy tonight? Lonely man, Cheyenne, will your heart stay free and fly? Cheyenne, Cheyenne.
It seemed like Warner Brothers had the lock on ABC because not only did they have the Westerns, but of course, 77 Sunset Strip, Hawaiian Eye, Bourbon Street Beat. They had a great formula. And your show, Sugarfoot, came about because Clint Walker, as Cheyenne, couldn't work enough hours in the week to do 36 or 39 one-hour episodes, so you came in and alternated weeks with him. What was Clint Walker like?
Just the greatest. No, I think I have you to thank for my golden boot, because I'd been out of the country for 3 years and I came back. I didn't know from Golden Boot, and I met you, and you invited me to come to the Golden Boot, and I didn't even know what that meant. Babs couldn't go, so I went by myself, and it was just marvelous. What a great thing.
Well, we were all thrilled to have you there, and so many of the great Western stars, and you fit right in because you were the lead of a top Western series as well. So Sugarfoot, I know the first episode, well, it took the title from the Randolph Scott movie. They took the plot from that Will Rogers film.
That Boy from Oklahoma, directed by Michael Curtiz.
Oh, and Merv Griffin. Merv Griffin was in that.
Oh, yeah, he played the bad guy. Anyhow, I remember him in it. Anyway, back to Clint Walker, my hero. When I got the Golden Boot, I was really scared. It's about as scared as I am right now talking with you. Flop sweat, you know. Anyhow, he was consoling me all day long. We were hung around. It was a whole day before we went indoors for some reason. So I saw him all day around a swimming pool and stuff, and he was consoling me. And I got to sit at his table, and I sat next to him. And he was consoling me and giving me pep talks and saying it was all fine. And he was the MC of that segment where all the Warner Brothers Cowboys got their golden boots. So I never forgot that. That was such a great thing to take his time to do. And the last time I ever talked to him on the phone, I was kind of feeling down. I said, I did a show the other day. I was really, I stank. He said, I can't believe that, Will. You never did anything that I didn't think was just fine. That was Clint Walker.
Well, all you guys were so tall, it seemed like, at Warner Brothers.
The tallest I ever got, I slumped now. Babs will always say, straighten up. And she puts a starch in my long johns, you know. But I was only 6'1.5" at the tallest. But the other guys, Clint, I don't think was quite that tall, except in his boots. The tallest, I guess, is Jim Arness. I did that one Gunsmoke, and boy, did I feel sorry for his force. Gee.
Well, that Gunsmoke that you did with Arness, with a terrific part, Ted Post directed that. What a wonderful director. What was that like after all those years starring in your own show to have a nice meaty part where you're accused of murder on the Gunsmoke?
It was a successful show by the time a real success. And number one, and he'd done it so long that he wouldn't do the over shoulders, you know, that the script guy would read his lines, you know, and you had to adjust to that, but, you know, he deserved it. And he produced a lot of the shows, I guess, and okayed the scripts. And we'd sit around before each scene and he'd say, don't read that line. We cut the dialogue to the bone, and which made it more terse and powerful, I think. I think he was great. And then he wouldn't rehearse straight. He'd rehearse like John Carradine doing Shakespeare. You had to pretty much toe the line, but he was just taken off. And I think that was to relax us all and to keep us from getting into a rut. Now, I understand that Brando did his thing where he didn't learn his lines. He had lines written all over the set. You've heard that. A friend of mine saw Jack Nicholson do a scene from Hoffa. He was on the set. And Nicholson subscribed to that too, not learning your lines and getting all stilted and thinking ahead and trying to do it exactly the way you've been doing instead of fresh. So he was doing a big scene in front of the jury, and he got hooked up in some way with his ears, and he had a friend in a closed soundproof box feeding him the lines. Jack Nicholson doing this long monologue. I got to see this movie. I don't know how they could do that and keep it flowing. Brando was the same way. He had these lines written all over, so he could almost discover them at the moment and say them fresh.
You worked with Jack Nicholson early in Jack's career in a classic, the two Monte Hellman films. You were in The Shooting with Jack Nicholson, Warren Oates, and Millie Perkins. I'll bet Jack wasn't reading or getting fed the information on his earphone back then.
That dialogue was so beautiful. It's the best dialogue I ever read at any part I was in. It was written by Carol Eastman.
You did a couple of episodes of Sugarfoot with Charles Bronson.
He was just terrific. I just remember one instance right offhand. Oh, this is called A Bullet in the Cross. Very low budget. We spent the whole time inside a cave after it had been blown by dynamite or something. I mean, it took dynamite to get us out of there, but we spent a whole hour in this cave, just the two of us. A little claustrophobia there. We were outdoors in one scene. We finally got outside, and he went up to the horse, his horse, the horse he was using, and he grabbed the pommel and just eased himself up into the stirrup without using his feet. Jeez, you can only fake that and make it look like me. I know he did the same thing with Clint Walker. He did a leap up onto a table or something. Clint, believe it or not, was able to do it, duplicate it. And then the other one was great too. He fell in love with this actress who was sort of a lot like Ingrid Bergman, Annalisa. She reminded me of Ingrid Bergman. And he fell in love with her. He was a ranch hand. He sent her a letter with my picture, asking her if she would be interested. And so she was. For some reason, I had to get involved in that. I wish he hadn't done that, but that's how it started.
At Warner Brothers, what was so terrific is all of those shows together, you all appeared in each other's shows. On Cheyenne, you and Ty Hardin were in that together. What was that like at Warner Brothers? Did they say, here, we've got something special, or they just say, today you're doing this?
I just went along with, I used to complain a lot. Geez. The scripts. I used to write comments. I was called 20 Takes Hutch, yeah.
What was that like on Warner Brothers? Because I know they had such a tight schedule with you having to do 20 takes.
Well, I didn't really ever do 20. It's all concentration. I did a Sugarfoot once with that great guy, Carl Swanson. He played Lord Henry Brenthrop on Our Girl Friday, or whatever it was called, Our Girl Friday on the radio. It was a soap opera. So I grew up hearing his voice. And then I got to work with, I got to work with all these great radio people who'd all been sort of phantoms to me. Now I got to work with him. And gee, it was a treat working with him. I got to work with him a few times. And I was having some trouble one day. We had a scene, the two of us were outdoors. And when I see the scene now, it stinks. I didn't really do much for it, but I was having trouble with it. And he said, just concentrate. Just look at the tip of my nose. That is the secret, concentration. Yeah, I should have gone to a concentration camp and learned how to do that there.
Well, in all of the Sugarfoots and looking at those Warner Brothers TV shows, they used a lot of B-Western stars in those. Don Red Berry and Bob Steele. What do you remember about those guys?
And one of the great ones, the great horseman, he had a brother that was famous too. He was an extra on Sugarfoot, and I couldn't.
Oh, Kermit Maynard, I bet.
I wrote a column once. I said of all the horse mounts I've seen over the years, that was just about the best. I don't even think he used his hands. I've been doing a lot of cogitating and reminiscing lately, the last few years, and I think I like just about everybody I worked with. I'm not sure it worked both ways. Even the people I thought I didn't like, some of the bosses, the suits.
The executives at Warner Brothers, how tough were they? How strict were they in what they allowed you to do?
Well, they had a lot of rules. It was just like going to school. You try to figure out how to fool the teacher. Oh, the last day I was in a lot. They assembled all the contract players. I'd never seen them all assembled in one day. Bob Hope joke. I said they put me in the back row because they didn't have enough pants to go around. So anyhow, we were all there. And Jack Warner didn't usually show up for these pictures. They superimposed them later on, faked it. But here he had Natalie Wood on one arm and Angie Dickinson on the other. I would have showed up too for that. And I mentioned to Clint, I've been here for 5 years and I've never met Mr. Warner. I guess I was the only one. And he says, well, I'll introduce you. And he pushed me right over. He says, Mr. Warner, hi, Clint, great to see you, he said, looking right straight at Clint. Not at me, right at Clint, shook his hand. Great to see you, Clint. You're looking terrific. Oh, thank you, Miss Warner. Will here says that he's never met you. Really? I'd seen him in the flashes, and that was it. And the next week, they shipped me over to the Philippines to fight Merrill's Marauders, Sam Fuller's Merrill's Marauders.
Almost 3,000 of us marched into that stinking, treacherous jungle. Barely 200 of us were left at the end. We won. Yeah, this was a job they said couldn't be done. But the American fighting men who did it were called Merrill's Marauders.
Merrill's Marauders was such a terrific movie, and Sam Fuller, of course, he had been in the trenches in World War II and later did The Big Red One and other war films, Steel Helmet. What was that experience like?
He made us get all these special forces guys. A lot of them went over to Vietnam after the picture, and a lot of them didn't come home. And I still get a letter from a guy who's now a general, Clyde Sincere. He was a colonel, I guess. And we still write Christmas cards to each other.
I've always heard that Sam Fuller, sometimes, not every time, instead of saying action, he'd pull out a pistol and shoot it.
He did that, and I was going to hook up bullet isn't coming down. Maybe it was just a blank, I hope.
Yeah, another terrific director that you did with an all-star cast of young up-and-comers is William Wellman's Lafayette Escadrille. You had David Jansen and Tab Hunter and Clint Eastwood in that, and Bill Wellman Jr. What do you remember about that?
That was my initiation into a feature film. And what a great guy it was to start with, William Wellman. Gosh, he was just, you could tell he knew what he was doing. And his son played him in the movie.
Men like Tommy Hitchcock, Duke Sinclair, Bill Wellman, Dave Putnam, and many others.
Went over there to fight World War I, and so his son played him.
Yes.
And we all played real people. And I had building over Clint Eastwood because he wasn't in a contract then. And there was one scene where we're all asleep in our cots, in the barracks. William Wellman, with that great voice of his, read the voiceover right on the spot. It wasn't dubbed in later. And then he came to me, and I was so nervous and I was so excited that my eyes flared. He was so great. And I had to do our opening scene. Tab Hunter comes to our barracks. I think he's on the lam too. He comes to our barracks and we all welcome him. And I'm in just skivvies. Clint Eastwood's wearing a T-shirt and I'm in skivvies. And I say, Mr. Allman, Mr. Wellman, couldn't I wear a T-shirt too? I mean, he said, son, an actor came up to me after taking, he said, Mr. Wellman, can I do that shot again? I said, why? He says, I was picking my nose. I said, son, keep picking your nose and you'll be a big star someday. That guy was Gary Cooper. And so we did the scene without my shirt. He said, cut print. Wow, that surprised me. And he was so friendly. I just said, what do you mean? He said, I thought you were going to stink. I said, yeah, I had to ask, didn't I? And I was living over a garage then, and it took 20 minutes to fill the bathtub. So I'm waiting there patiently for the bathtub to fill. My mom says, somebody on the phone for you, Mr. Wellman. So I go on the phone, hello, Mr. Wellman. And he said, hi, well, I just want to tell you, I think you're doing a fine job. We're going to build up your part. And I think he was trying to atone for saying that I was going to stink. But geez, he went to the trouble to call me and pat me on the back over the phone. And I thought, geez, this is a great business. Wow, I'm glad. Well, he was the only director ever to do that, except for Montgomery Pittman.
And then with Clint, later on, you did Magnum Force with him that Ted Post directed. How were you casting that? Because I was so surprised to see you in the film because you were unbilled. It was just a special cameo for me. I went, oh, look, there's Will.
I was in the circus then, and I was a ringmaster and a clown in several circuses. I guess I was a clown in this particular circus. And we were going to open in the Boston Arena where the Boston Celtics play. And I said, I'm going to get to see that famous floor. Oh, boy, it's going to be great working in here. Get a phone call. come out to Hollywood. You're going to do Magnum Force. So I flew out to L.A., then went up to Frisco and did Magnum Force. So I played a cop who gets shot, but I had a bulletproof vest on. But I don't know if the audience understood that. So I get shot and I go, boing. Then I come back into the scene. And I always wondered, I haven't seen the movie in a long time. So they showed it finally at Warner Brothers. And I was invited for the screening. By then I was through with the circus, I guess. So I went to see the movie. And guess who was in the audience? Mae West, of all people. Mae West saw me in a movie. There used to be a theater. I don't know if you heard of it or remember. It was called the Hitching Post. It was one in the Valley, but there was one on Hollywood Boulevard. And I was a movie nut, always was. My grandmother would pick me up at grammar school when I was in kindergarten on Thursdays and take me to the movies. So I just fell in love with movies. First movie I ever saw was the March of the Wooden Soldiers, or whatever they called it. But anyhow, I love the movies and love Westerns. And Saturdays, I'd take the Asbury Transit bus into Hollywood Boulevard, get off, and go to like Pantages or the Grauman's Chinese or the Paramount to see a movie. But then afterwards, I'd fork over some more money and go see the B. Westerns at the Hitching Post.
Well, I've been a fan for a long time, and it's just been fun to listen to your stories and to share your memories with all of your Western fans.
But you are a master. You just got me rolling, and I could have gone all day.
You're part of our legacy. Thank you, Will. We'll see you down the road, pal.
Adios, amigo. See you around the campfire. Yee-haw.
Oh, you're the audience, aren't you?
Yeah.
So what did you think of that? I'll bet you've never even seen a Sugarfoot episode.
Honestly, I couldn't tell you if I have or haven't. I've walked through our home kitchen so many times with some 1950s Western playing loudly on the TV that...
You know, your mom just this morning was turning on the TV as I was getting ready to go out and walk the dog, and she says, every time I turn on the TV, there's a Western on it. And I went, you lucky girl.
Yeah, I mean, what better can you ask for?
Well, I want to thank Will again for being our guest. He was just terrific, and I do like those Sugarfoot episodes. And what is interesting is all the stuff you hear about Jack Warner being a son of a bitch. I guess he was a real son of a bitch.
Yeah, well, you don't get to be in a studio head by being the nicest guy on the block.
I guess not. Well, anyway, I want to thank everybody out there for joining us, and I hope you join us for our next edition of A Word on Westerns podcast.
Happy trails.
Happy trails.
If you enjoy what we do here, please take a moment to follow our show and share these interviews with your friends. You can also find A Word on Westerns on Patreon, Facebook, and YouTube. Thank you, and see you next week on A Word on Westerns. A Word on Westerns is produced and hosted by Rob and RJ Word. Edited by Alex Lockett and Bohr and Ebor Dro. Location audio is provided by Richard Reagan. Sound design by Alex Lockett. A Word on Westerns theme song was composed by Karel Pasoda with additional arrangements by Shipwreck Music and RJ Word.